if you click on that, it should open a chat box for you where you're welcome to type any questions or observations you have during the session, and we'll make sure we make time to pick up on those towards the end of the conversation. So feel welcome to contribute. I would like to introduce now the three expert panelists who are going to talk to us about this subject today. So Trudy, Suzanne and Helen, welcome to the webinar, and I'd like you all to just say hello and introduce yourselves. So shall we start with Suzanne?
Yeah, hi, that's me. I'm president of the IIC, which is the professional body dedicated to internal comms. This year we're celebrating our 70th birthday, which should be doing it for many years, really. Personally, I've got around, well, a bit more than 25 years experience in internal comms, so working in-house and agency side with global organisations. So my knowledge really comes from a very practical experience. So, hi.
Excellent, thank you. Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen Deverell. So I'm an independent internal communicator. I've been doing internal comms for about 11 years and have worked both in-house and agency side as well. So bring that mix of experience to this research. I'm also currently the vice chair of the CIPR Inside Committee. So we are a sectoral group of CIPR and really aim at supporting internal communicators to be as confident and as knowledgeable and skilled as they can possibly be.
Brilliant, thank you, Helen. And Trudy.
Hi, this is Trudy Lewis. I am an independent practitioner as well, working mainly in internal comms, but also doing some leadership coaching. So I have about 25 years of experience within internal comms or communication. Started out from PR, and quite passionate about championing best practice, which is one of the reasons why I'm very involved in CIPR Inside Committee. That's me.
Excellent. Oh, thank you very much. So I'd like to get the discussion going and pose some questions to you, if I may. And I'd like to start off, Trudy, with you. So where did the idea come from to do this large-scale piece of research on measurement in IC?
Well, it kind of came out of the first report that we did. So in 2017, we produced a report, The Value and Effectiveness of Internal Comms, that we did as a committee, just, pulling together research. We spoke to a number of CEOs to get their views on things. And one of the areas within that was performance and productivity and how good internal comms impacts that. So a big challenge for us there was how difficult it was to measure. It came out from the CEOs. They themselves said it was difficult. And we thought as a group that we would take that on as the next project to work on. I didn't expect us to be doing such a detailed report, which we ended up with. I was thinking more of it as a white paper. We very much at CIPR Inside started kind of the whole insight thing. Helen's very much a big part of that, Advita and a few others, with a kind of interest to get some insight within the industry. So this is kind of just part of that. We also kind of wanted to address this topic because it's one that's been talked about a lot across the industry. There's a lot of noise. There are lots of kind of reports out there and questions. I haven't probably been to a conference or seminar that doesn't ask the question, how do we measure? How can we do it? So again, it was quite a timely thing for us to have.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And Suzanne, I'm really interested to know from your perspective, at the time that the idea was sort of suggested to you, what was the sentiment like with the members of IOIC? Did that message resonate for you too?
Oh, totally. In a recent survey, 37% of members said they want more support from us on measurement and evaluation, which is why we were so keen to be involved as well. And we run training courses. There's one happening this afternoon, all focused on measurement. So it's very much part of our DNA, because we know at IOIC, as everybody else does, if you don't measure, how do you know what actually works and what needs fixing? And our view is that internal communication is rapidly going to run out of usefulness if we don't get to grips with measurement. Every company that invests in a new product or a new service, a campaign, they will have measurement of that in place. So why should IC be any different? So if we are to continue this steady and rise into transforming organisational performance and working lives, then demonstrating value has to be part of that story.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And what, when you embarked on the research project with us, what were you hoping that the output would achieve?
A unicorn? Yeah, not sure. But we knew there was so much noise and such a lot of material out there. And really, it's a mind-boggling array. There's models, there's approaches, there's surveys, there's, quasi products, so filtering all of this information into something that would be practical and useful really for everybody involved in IC, not just practitioners, but also others interested in IC. That really was our vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the phrase mind-boggling array. I think that might resonate with Trudy and Helen as well. So Trudy, bearing in mind you're dealing with a mind-boggling array, how did you set about getting that all together in one place? And what were the challenges with doing that?
Is that's to me?
Yeah.
Well, it took us. It took all of us actually. So we put a call out to the committee to start with, for everybody to search for reports and data and things that kind of tell us how to handle measurement. So that was the first part. We'd written a proposal in terms of kind of what we're going to cover and so on, and so we knew we were going to start with existing research. I think the challenge at first was, do we do our own research or do we not? And it was really about why add to the large amount Suzanne just mentioned of content that was out there. We just thought we would look at what was out there already. So it was kind of pulling a lot of the data together from where people work. So there are some things in there about the government central services and some of the things that they've produced. And then for us to review them and kind of pull them together. But it was I think that was probably the biggest challenge, deciding which ones to focus on, because we didn't want to miss important pieces of research. So we needed to find them, and then we also didn't want to not represent things well. So it took us a bit of time to get that done.
Yeah, I can well imagine. And Helen, I'd like to ask you, if I may, what was the sort of result of all that information gathering phase, and what did you do with everything?
Yeah, so as Suzanne and Trudy have said, there was an awful lot of information out there, and we were looking for information beyond internal comms as well. So we looked at other disciplines, how they were using measurement best practice, and then between us, we sort of did a critical analysis of the research that we selected that we felt was most appropriate, really to try to understand where there were models or frameworks or approaches that could be applied to internal comms, and then also to look at where there would be gaps that would potentially mean that we would need to evolve these models or adapt them in some way. And also really in the back of our minds always the question of, if there are approaches and frameworks out there that could help, why is measurement still such an issue for us as an industry? So that was sort of what the thinking was going into it. And we spent a lot of time doing that critical analysis. And we also ran a survey as well to ask internal communicators how they were currently measuring, to try and understand what some of those challenges were as well. But yeah, so it really was sort of looking at what was there and how it could be applied, or how we could use that, and to try and come together with some kind of consistent approach to measurement across the industry. And ultimately then at the end of it, we were trying to look at what the future state of measurement could be for internal comms. So what could be the key priorities that we could help people to think about around best practice for internal communication, and that's sort of what's accumulated in this report, sort of the overview of how we've gone about that, and then what we feel those priorities need to be going forward.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, and so while you were sifting all that information and looking at all those different models and approaches, what sort of things stood out for you? Was there anything in there that surprised you, or any sort of key things that seemed common across those?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of really good models out there. I think we sort of did recognise that a lot of them would need to be adapted for internal communication. I think one of the key things for the models that I particularly reviewed was that I think there is a lot of theoretical information out there about measurement, but not so much around the practical. So I think most people know what they should be doing, but I think it's actually quite overwhelming knowing where to start and how you actually go about finding that data. And I think a lot of the theory doesn't have the accompaniment of the practicality aspect, and that could potentially be a stumbling block. So that was one thing that we did sort of identify as there's plenty of theory there, but people probably do need that extra bit of support into how they actually practically go about that day to day in an organisation that is, obviously every organisation is different, and there's multiple challenges coming at you from different areas. So how do you really measure effectively in that scenario? It's all well and good having the theory, but it's the putting it into practice. So I think that was, for me, something that stood out that is potentially missing from how we talk about measurement.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Helen. So Trudy, I've had a look at the report now that it's been put together, and what I thought was really interesting is that you've obviously refined the number of potential solutions down, but there isn't just one solution in there. You've listed a few solutions, but you've highlighted 5 key themes. So I'm really interested to know, why did you take that approach?
The real reason for the 5 themes. So we looked at, as Helen said, a lot of research. What we found, one of the things we did find, was that most of the research was talking about a couple of central themes from specific kind of research. So we found that everybody referred to AMEC in some way. The Barcelona principles kind of appeared. So no matter which organization had created their own model, they'd kind of pulled from these central ones than the ones that we've highlighted in the report. So as we kind of went through, we thought about how it isn't so much about kind of having a model or a framework, but it's about how you apply these to your own organization. So again, it's heavily led by looking at the objectives of the organization and how the communications objectives match with that, and taking that and measuring it as well. So it kind of helped us to bring, rather than a framework, 5 themes that we felt people should focus on. There's reference to kind of each one of them in there. We've kind of said a few points about how to handle each one or what to look at, and some ideas about it. But ideally it was kind of almost an obvious thing. So I think when we started out, we were going to try and put together a framework and so on. I think the more we looked at it, the more we realized that one approach didn't fit everybody's situation, and that it was really important for us as practitioners to step up to the plate and make ourselves accountable, have conversations with leadership, do the work really of framing what measurement should look like for the individual organization. And also based on things like your budget and so on, because again, going back to the small peer survey that we did, we found that a lot of people highlighted the fact that there were barriers like time, budget, support, and so on. So it's looking at all of those things and kind of formulating measurement that in a way that you could work with it.
Yeah, okay, that absolutely makes sense. And Suzanne, now that the full report is completed and you can see the outcome, and obviously those 5 themes, what are the key takeaways for you?
I think there are 5 key points for me, which is quite neat, really, isn't it? I think that the one I would start with is, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. One size fits-all model doesn't fit all, as Trudy said. So what this report does is give you an opportunity to review the models, to explore and approach really what would work within your organisation. Thirdly, for me, it's about make measurement your own, but importantly, make a start. Let's make that step really beyond measuring analytics and clicks and views. That's just vanity. It's not actual sanity. It doesn't really tell us a great deal, apart from people are either picking up the magazine or they're opening something. There's no engagement as part of that. Fourthly, I think we've got to be seen to be more business-like. We talk a lot about, we want to be at the table. I'm not sure if I want to be at a table if I can't actually supply, have a professional and business-like outlook there.
Yeah.
We've got to be committed to proving impact and results. And finally, for me, it's about data, not opinion. We can all have opinions about things, but it's just opinion if you don't have the stats to back that up. So from IOIC's point of view, marrying the science and the art of what we do, that's the way forward, because improving engagement through proven internal comms is not just good for us as in practitioners, it's also good for us as internal comms and for the organisations that we work in.
I think that's an excellent point, actually, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve, isn't it? It's it's not just about proving our value, it's actually knowing ourselves that we're adding value, and the value we're adding is to the people and the organisations that we work with and for. So yeah, excellent points. Excellent points. I love the phrase vanity, not sanity.
I didn't have that one written down either.
That's brilliant. That's such a good way to remember, what the difference is there between those kind of reaction metrics and actually the outcomes and outputs. That is what we really should be having our eyes on, right? To see what we're actually driving. Sure. Yeah, some brilliant observations there. So the report is ready. It's going to be made available. The full report is available to CIPR and IOIC members from today, I believe. Is that correct?
So from today, the executive summary is available on both websites. That's CIPR Inside and IOIC. The address comes a bit later. And if you're a member of either of those organizations, you can access the full version report through the member area. So we're really encouraging people to have a look at the summary, ask questions, and hopefully it will help you to kind of set up the type of measurement that works for your organization as well. So
brilliant. The executive summary is open to anybody to access. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. So Helen, now that the report is available, what are your hopes for the next steps and where internal communicators will go next with measurement?
I think for me, I think it's really important that this is starting a conversation. And I think one of the key objectives was trying to help internal communicators be more confident in their approach to measuring. I think that's something I would like to see off the back of this, is sort of recognition that there is a lot of support out there. There are models and frameworks that can be applied, and to encourage people to start investigating that further and to really start measuring in a more strategic way across their organisations, and to feel that they now have potentially some of the knowledge and insight to be able to do that. I think with the understanding as well that obviously a lot of this does need to be, as you said, no one size fits all. So recognising that there isn't a, just because you're not doing something exactly the same as someone else doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think to just try and instill that confidence in people that you understand your organisation, and you can then apply the models in the way that works to get the measurement that you need. So I think for me that it sort of comes down to that confidence. That's what I'd like to see as one of the sort of initial outcomes of this report.
Yeah, excellent. And Suzanne, how about you? Any thoughts on what you hope will be the outcome of publishing this report?
Yeah, I think, as we've covered, I think it's turning down the volume on some of the noise out there and amplifying the best practice. I think for IOIC, we really would like to be seeing how this report is proving useful with our members, and continuing to help them make that step to embracing data and how to use it best to prove outcomes, not just outputs. Using it really to deliver better internal communication. It's stitched through what we do anyway, so it's really just making sure this report is adding and not taking away from information.
Yeah, absolutely, great point. And Trudy, anything from you to add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree with both Suzanne and Helen. A lot of this comes down to us being open to learning more, learning new things. If we don't know it, we need to go and find the information or speak to somebody to help them. I mean, right here we've got represented 2 organizations that look after internal comms. It's about kind of wanting to gain an understanding about how business works, and the role that we need to play in that, if we really want to be taken seriously. So I see or hope that people will kind of make that decision to kind of be a bit proactive, do what they need to do to get all the information they need to take it forward. If they're not sure, get advice, and then just increase their skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point. We're both here, CIPR Inside and IOIC, to support our members as they take those first steps into trying out different routes to measurement and that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely, great point. Thank you so much. So we are about to move into the section of the webinar where we'll answer some questions, and I'd like to remind you that there's a chat box. If you click on the speech bubble at the bottom of the screen, you should get a chat box that pops up, and you're more than welcome to put your observations or questions in there. So we have a question already, which I'd like to put to the panelists. So thank you so much for this question, and it is, what are your thoughts about using qualitative data? So there's an observation that maybe I see people are a little afraid of using qualitative information. So whoever'd like to speak about that, feel welcome.
I'm happy to leap in. Do you know what? It's the other way around for me. I love the qualitative. It's the quantitative that I don't really like. So that's brilliant. I think that to me comes back to the vanity and the sanity. The vanity is the quantitative, so that's the how many, how often, all those sort of things. For me, the real pearls are in the qualitative, and it doesn't have to be too big. It could be speaking to like a small focus group. It's really getting those little nuggets of information that they're the bits that start to change behavior. So I don't think personally you can have one without the other. So yeah, I love qualitative. I'd rather just do that, but then I'd be art and not science.
I agree. I think qualitative is really important, and sometimes it's how you frame that rather than being afraid of it, kind of saying, well, how does it then kind of align with some of the objectives that you have, and what you're trying to achieve, really. So if you look at qualitative as the output of some of the things that you've done, but then also kind of match it against some really strong case studies of things that have actually happened in other organizations. Again, that's great evidence to take to senior leadership if you want to kind of prove a point that internal comms works. So I think it's hugely important to do both, and it's really important to get your head around both and be very kind of strategic how you're planning that qualitative data, rather than, oh, we'll just ask a few people a few questions. It needs to be kind of thought through, and that's where it has a bit more meaning.
Excellent.
I think as well with the qualitative aspect, I think people can be scared of it because it does provide that context. I think when you're looking at the quantitative, they can often look quite impressive results because they don't necessarily have the context behind it. We often talk about, well, we had 4,000 people open an internet article, isn't that amazing? But we don't know what that really means. It's not meaningful, whereas the qualitative provides that. And I always think it's important to remember that we're not measuring to prove how great we are. We're measuring to really understand what's happening, where understanding is, and what we can do as a result of that. So it's okay if the results aren't as great as you hoped. It's okay to need to learn from that or need to make adjustments. I think that's the point of measurement, is to understand how things are working, not to prove how great we are. I think if we take that sort of mindset out of it, it makes it much less scary to measure the qualitative stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Really excellent points. Thank you, all three of you. That was fantastic. So we've got plenty of other questions coming in, which I'm so pleased about. So the next one is, do you have any advice to offer on how to measure communications that are directed to an offline audience? So for example, if you're looking at the outcome of using internal magazines and newspapers, that sort of thing.
I think I'll kick off that one. I think for me, I've worked with kind of remote work as well, where we've had kind of the main tool of communicating with them was magazines. And to be honest, the best way to get feedback or to find out what was happening and measure things was to get out there and meet with them, get to where they are, find out how they're feeling. A lot of the reporting I did at that time in terms of to build the content for those channels was actually to get the story from the areas. So it's almost that double thing where you get the story and then you go back and find out how the feedback is, you know, how it was received. So there's an element to which obviously you check how many copies have gone out and all that kind of stuff, which again goes to quantitative. But then there is that thing of kind of getting actual feedback that then feeds the next issue or the next kind of thing that you're going to do, and understand how it's being received. And I remember just quickly working with kind of an area where the way how the magazine was set up was like the Sun. So it was very much tabloidy, lots of pictures, very few, no girls, but very few kind of long articles. And it was done like that on purpose because the guys out in the business just didn't have the time, but they did need the news, and they actually really valued it.
That's really interesting. Any other observations on that?
And just in the past, we've used mobile, so getting comments through text, and also as these days more internal social channels as well. So putting questions out there, because as Trudy said, it's mainly qualitative and it's getting people's views and how we then inform the next issues, and that's really valuable to keep a flow going. So that's another way of doing it.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so shall I move on to the next question? This is a great question, actually. Skills development in this area is really important. So do we have any plans to host more courses or more webinars or more online resources to help our communicators with their skills development?
Okay, I'll go again. One of the things we were thinking of with this report is that there's a lot in there, and we were thinking it might be good to break it up a little bit and to cover some of the specific areas. So we talk about 5 themes that we've picked out. What do those themes mean? What kind of sits behind some of that might be an avenue to do that. And also within CIPR Inside, we develop kind of skill guides that relate to the topics that we talk about as well. So I think it's just a case of just developing more and more.
Yeah.
And from my OIC's perspective, there's actually a workshop this afternoon, so unless you can actually hot-foot it down, it's about measurement and looks at what the Bank of England, what their approach was and their results were. So as I say, it's a constant within our agenda. It's a key part of our professional development map, and things like the professional qualifications like the foundation diplomas, the advanced diploma and the masters. Measurement is a vital part of all of those, as well as the other courses. I think we run about I wish I knew, but it's about 10 courses over a year anyway, that specifically address measurement, and they're aimed at different levels.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Did you have anything to add to that, Helen? Have you ever come across any learning resources you found helpful with measurement?
I think in regards to, just to build on what Trudy was saying in regards to what we do as an Inside Committee, but I lead the content panel on the Inside Committee. So we're always trying to think of resources and events and webinars that can help members. So measurement is definitely on that agenda and is something that we're going to be looking to support with really over the next few months. So if people do have suggestions on what they'd like to see or what format they'd like to see it in, we're always very open to hearing those views.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I guess that is part of the key to it. If you have any specifics around measurement that you know are blockers, just let us know, and then we're in a better position to make sure we're providing the best resources to support you. So that would be great. Okay, more questions. So I hope you're braced for more questions. Oh, it's just rolled over the page. Let me find that again. So really good question. Are there any case studies you'd recommend that we can look at where companies are using measurement with success? So I think our members would like to see maybe some good case studies, and also that focus on organisations of various different sizes too.
Oh, sorry, go Suzanne.
Oh, go on, after you, Trudy. Okay. I found one of the best resources is the Government Communication Service. That's a free online resource, and they, as well as the how, they also have great case studies of organisations of different sizes have actually coped and what their approaches has been. So that's one really good resource. And also, I would also advise looking at award winners. So there are 7 strategy classes in the IOIC Awards, and although sometimes some of that material is quite sensitive, just like you guys, I found it to be a really open community. If you approach somebody to say, could you just let me know, that's always worth a try. People are happy to help and share.
I agree. I think case studies is something that we are challenged with, in that we haven't got as many as we'd like to kind of demonstrate, especially things like ROI and measurement. But there are some good ones that Suzanne's just mentioned. So it's also kind of things like conferences. Sometimes when we do case study elements within the conference, it is from an award that we kind of feature kind of what the awardees have submitted. So it's really around kind of looking at kind of our kind of organization websites and so on, articles that are written, because sometimes they cover it simply because of the sensitivity. Sometimes, you know, they're written quite carefully, they can't say everything. But recently, having reached out to a company that I wanted to do a piece of work, they had some great examples of things they'd done as well. So I think that there are lots of little areas that you can tap into case studies. I think more and more as we keep developing these areas, we'll probably find as organisations we develop our own kind of case studies too.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well that I agree. I think that we are a little limited on the case study front, but I think there are some great examples out there. I think we just need to surface them a little bit more, which again will be part of what we want to do with some of the content we create. For example, about a year or so ago, I did do an article where I put a call out for people that had worked with other departments to measure more effectively inside their organisations. And I ended up interviewing Advita Patel, who was at Manchester Airport Group at the time, and Jude Tipper as well, who worked in the NHS. And they had really interesting examples of how they'd collaborated with other departments to really prove that they, beyond sort of the quantitative stuff, to really show the impact they were having on more organisational objectives. So I think that is going on. I think we just need to either be able to facilitate those conversations more, to surface those sorts of stories, and to also be capturing them. But I would also recommend, if you want to look for examples, ask the network. It will be out there. And then as industry bodies, we can obviously support that by creating those case studies and creating those opportunities to have those conversations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah, let's all keep talking about it. That's the best way to kind of dispel the confusion and the fear, I suppose, isn't it? If we're all sharing our examples and all talking about it through our practice. So yeah, excellent. Okay, I've had an observation in from Mark. Hi, Mark. And it's going back to the quantitative and qualitative discussion, and it's kind of more of an observation than a question. And Mark says, do we feel that qualitative is often the why, while quantitative is often the what of what we're measuring? So he gives an example. So hits on an intranet page going down could indicate that people don't find them as useful as they did before, or it could indicate that the information is successfully embedded, so they don't need to go and look at it there. So the only way to really find that out is through qualitative feedback. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, basically. I think so. But what I'd be wary of is looking at what, I know this isn't what you're saying, Mark, but I wouldn't look at one thing as being the indicator of this is the atmosphere or the climate at the moment. There could be so many other reasons. I think you could take that example of the pages going down, but look a little wider perhaps. I don't think, one swallow doesn't really make a spring as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I would agree that you have to look more widely. You have to kind of, within qualitative, you can pull out so much, and you can also kind of identify a number of factors that have fed into that. If you had the time, you could probably kind of delve into some of those, but it would be kind of, you'd probably get it skewed. You'd probably go off in a tangent if you did that. So I think it is about being careful about how you do that.
I think as well that plays into the sort of ethical side of measurement as well, and that I think when you look at data, you can interpret it in certain ways, and you may have a certain view on things which can skew that, and not intentionally by any means, but I think by doing the qualitative side of it, you get that context which can make sure that you're making the right assumptions about the data that you've got in front of you, which is a really important aspect of it, as we can all be potentially guilty of looking at data in certain ways. So it's sort of just to help us to build that bigger picture, to make sure that we are being as objective as possible, and have sort of analysed it in the way that it's is reflective of what really is happening.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much. So another question, maybe a side topic in a way, I guess on the point of skills development, do we have any good guidance or any good case studies or frameworks available around communications audit work?
We didn't look at audits specifically, but it was definitely mentioned. I think when we went through the peer survey, a number of people said they used audits. I've used audits as well, and kind of have my own little template of how I carry things out. But I don't know that we have it as a kind of tool for anybody. I don't know if the others have any advice on that. But it is quite good to kind of develop your own from kind of so it's kind of like finding the types of questions that need to be asked within the audit and then develop your own. And I think that's one of the things that I did, kind of frame it myself, because it, then it was very tailored to the group that I was dealing and the subject I was dealing with.
And I think it's, as we said, oh, sorry, Helen. I think it's, as we said, really what one size doesn't fit all. And we had a bit of a joke yesterday when we launched the report that there really are some very bad ways to do things, and there's a range of quite poor questions. We should be probably identifying those, but let's also identify what are good questions, because I think to try and help people say, here's a list of things that you could choose from, that's useful. But I do believe it depends on your organisation and what the objective is. What actually do you want to get out of there? That to me will govern what you go forward with. Sorry, Helen, over to you.
No, that's fine. I completely agree. I think you have to take into account that the specific organisation and what you're trying to find out with the audit. But I just also wanted to mention that as part of the content we're creating as the Inside Committee, we do actually have a skills guide coming up on audits and how to audit. So that will be coming out over the summer, and that sort of gives a suggested approach, again, one that you can tailor to suit your organisation and what you're trying to achieve, but hopefully that will give a bit of guidance as well. And I'm sure there are other sources out there, but I do agree with what both Trudy and Suzanne said there as well.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So that's the end of the questions in the chat box for now. I'd like to encourage you, if you had any more final thoughts, or if that conversation has triggered another question, please feel welcome to pop that in the chat box. We do have time to pick up some more, so I'll keep an eye on that. Somebody has mentioned in the Q&A section that they're having difficulty finding the report, but we will make sure that it's really obvious to you where you can go to download either the executive summary if you're not a member, or the full report if you're a member of either CIPR Inside or IOIC. So we'll make sure that report is available to everybody today. So I just wanted to ask if there are any more opportunities for people to hear about the report. Will we be running any more workshops, that sort of thing? I think maybe this will be mentioned in the CIPR conference coming up, Trudy, is that right?
Yep. So yes, we are having a session within the conference. The conference this year is called Changing the Conversation. It will be held in October. I don't know if Helen wants to go into more detail about the conference for us, but generally I think we are featuring an element of measurement at this conference as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just to add, so the conference theme is Changing the Conversation. It's taking place in Birmingham in October, and it's really an opportunity to start taking that more strategic view of internal communication. We want to really start encouraging people to take that next step, and to make sure that we become more of a profession that's seen as a critical business function. So obviously measurement forms a really important aspect of that changing the conversation. So it will form a fundamental part of our conference in October. So we'll be doing some more on this report and measurement more broadly there in October.
Perfect, thank you. So Suzanne, I know you're running a training session about it this afternoon, which is very, very short notice. Do you have any other plans to be talking about this report more in any public settings in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think through our FutureNet group, I was talking to some of the people there this morning, and I think it raises all sorts of issues. I think, as Trudy and Helen have said, it would be really interesting to find out from our members, is there one thing? What are the barriers, for example, so we can really find practical ways to help people, and opening up the discussion around FutureNet. We have the regional events as well. I think it would be really great to see this as a theme, so that we can canvass opinion really from practitioners at all levels, because I work with a lot of senior communicators and they struggle with this just the same. And I think in a way there's almost a fear of saying, I don't know how to approach this. And it's not just junior or people new to the profession. We've really got to address and try and support everybody in the best way we can.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, there are no more questions in the chat box, so I guess it just remains for us to make any final comments or observations we'd like to make before we close the conversation. So, Trudy, I'll ask you first. Are there any kind of summative comments that you'd like to make before we close? Okay, I think we may have lost Trudy. Oh, she's back, she's back.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
Did you want to make any concluding comments, Trudy?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get back.
Shall I
I can't see anything. Sorry. Yeah, for me, it's about kind of us as communicators becoming bolder, being more confident, and actually taking the information and doing kind of making it our own, stepping out there and working on measurement, not being afraid of it. If it's easier to break it up in chunks and do smaller things like focus groups or kind of look around smaller themes for measurement, do that if that works. But I just really think that we need to kind of step up and become accountable and confident about what we know to do with measurement.
Excellent, thank you. Helen, how about you? Any final remarks that you'd like to make? No? Okay. Shall I hand over to you, Suzanne? I think I can still hear you. Did you have any closing comments?
Yes, just really, it was, I think this has been a really interesting exercise, and good to work with CIPR Inside. There's so many things we can do together to help, this wonderful profession that we're in to actually be better. Also, we weren't trying to reinvent what was at the wheel. You know, there's an awful lot of really good sound quality information out there, and I think by pulling it together, hopefully into one place, that's useful, and it's going to make it easier for people to tackle what really is a very huge issue within our industry, and not be afraid of measurement and of demonstrating how brilliant we are on the work we do and how good that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much. So Helen, I think I have your audio back now. Did you have any concluding comments that you'd like to make before we end the webinar?
Yes, so just that it was a really positive experience, and it's been great to be able to do this collaboration between two industry bodies. I think that was really great, and I just hope people find it a really useful resource. And as I said earlier, it can help build that confidence and to start see us measuring in a much more strategic way, in a way that supports organisational objectives. So I hope that people do find that this is, as Suzanne said, collates all of that together and makes that really useful.
Perfect.
I think just finally, I just wanted to say thanks to Suzanne, IOIC, Advita, Helen, you know, the group that did all the research, Jenny Field, and Alive with Ideas for being our design partner in it as well. So it's been you know, a full-on experience, but it's been good fun.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you so much. So thank you, Suzanne, Helen and Trudy, for those brilliant observations and that lovely conversation we've had in this webinar today. Thank you so much if you asked a question. It's so great to know what's on your mind, and it helps us to open up the conversation too. So thank you very much, everybody who dialed in, and particularly to those of you who asked us a question. As we mentioned, the reports, the executive report and the summary, the full report rather, will both be available today, and we'll make sure that we share links to those. Keep the conversation going. If you've got any more questions that come up after the webinar's ended, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, email, however you usually get in touch with us, and let's keep this conversation about measurement going. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.